The town of Centralia, Pennsylvania, had been abandoned for decades. Its population dwindled from over 1,000 to just a handful. The underground coal mine fire that started in 1962 had rendered it uninhabitable. However, the town's eerie silence and mysterious history attracted thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. On a chilly autumn afternoon, Sarah and her friends, Alex and Mark, decided to explore the remnants of Centralia. They were avid urban explorers, always on the lookout for places with dark pasts and unsettling atmospheres. As they drove into town, the landscape became increasingly desolate. The few remaining houses were crumbling, overtaken by nature. The air smelled faintly of sulfur. Their first stop was the old St. Ignatius Church, one of the last buildings standing. Its Gothic architecture loomed ominously, the stained glass windows shattered, and the wooden doors hanging precariously. The trio pushed open the doors, the hinges creaking loudly in the silence. Inside, the church was dark and cold. Pews were overturned, and a thick layer of dust covered everything. An altar at the far end seemed strangely untouched, its cross casting long shadows in the dim light. As they approached, they noticed a faint humming sound, almost like whispers, emanating from beneath the floorboards. Curiosity got the better of them, and they searched for a way to access the basement. Behind the altar, they found a trapdoor, its wooden surface worn but still intact. With some effort, they pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Armed with flashlights, they cautiously made their way down. The basement was cramped and musty, filled with old storage boxes and religious relics. At the far end, they discovered a small, makeshift room, its walls covered in strange symbols and candles arranged in a circle on the floor. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. As they examined the symbols, a sudden chill filled the room. The candles flickered, though there was no draft. Mark reached out to touch one of the symbols, and as he did, the room seemed to warp around them. Shadows danced along the walls, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around, but there was nothing there. Panic set in as the whispers turned into anguished cries. They bolted up the stairs, slamming the trapdoor shut behind them. The church seemed darker than before, the oppressive atmosphere almost tangible. They hurried outside, breathing heavily, their nerves frayed. The streets of Centralia seemed even more desolate in the fading daylight. As they walked towards their car, they noticed movement in the distance. A figure, shrouded in mist, stood at the edge of the road, watching them. They quickened their pace, but the figure remained, its gaze following them. As they reached the car, the ground beneath them rumbled slightly, a reminder of the fire that still burned underground. They got in and sped away, the figure disappearing in the rearview mirror. Deciding to stay the night before heading home, they found a rundown motel a few miles from Centralia. The owner, an elderly man with a haunted look in his eyes, gave them a room key without a word. The room was shabby but serviceable, with an old TV and threadbare curtains. As night fell, they discussed their experience in Centralia, trying to make sense of what they had seen. The whispers, the symbols, and the shadowy figure all pointed to something deeply unsettling. They decided to get some sleep and leave first thing in the morning. That night, Sarah had a vivid nightmare. She was back in Centralia, standing in the church basement. The symbols on the walls glowed with an eerie light, and the whispers grew louder, forming words she couldn't understand. The shadowy figure appeared, reaching out towards her. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. She woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The room was dark, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. She glanced at the clock. It was just past 3 a.m. She noticed Alex and Mark were also restless, their faces contorted in discomfort. Clearly they were having nightmares too. The next morning they shared their experiences. Alex had dreamt of the underground fire, feeling the heat and hearing the screams of those trapped. Mark dreamt of the figure, its eyes boring into him, paralyzing him with fear. They realized Centralia had left a mark on them, one that wouldn't fade easily. As they drove away from the motel, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to hide something sinister. The road ahead felt long and ominous, and the memory of Centralia lingered, a dark cloud over their thoughts. Back home, they tried to return to their normal lives, but the nightmares persisted. Sarah found herself drawn to researching Centralia's history, uncovering stories of disappearances, strange sightings, and the town's slow descent into madness. The more she learned, the more she felt the pull of the town. One evening, she discovered an old diary from a former resident, detailing the town's slow decline and the strange rituals that had taken place in the church. The last entry spoke of a dark presence that had been awakened, one that demanded a sacrifice. Sarah couldn't resist the pull any longer. She convinced Alex and Mark to return to Centralia, to confront whatever was haunting them. Reluctantly, they agreed, hoping to find closure. They arrived at the town just as dusk was settling, the familiar sense of dread washing over them. They headed straight for the church. As they entered, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. The trapdoor to the basement was already open, as if waiting for them. Steeling themselves, they descended once more. In the basement, the symbols glowed faintly and the candles were lit. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. The shadowy figure appeared, its form more defined now, almost human. It spoke in a language they didn't understand, but the intent was clear. It wanted them to complete the ritual. Sarah, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, picked up a nearby book. It was filled with incantations and instructions for the ritual. As she read aloud, the room began to shake and the figure grew more substantial, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. The figure demanded a sacrifice, and the trio realized they had to act quickly. They decided to burn the book, hoping it would break the curse. As the flames consumed the pages, the figure screamed, its form dissolving into smoke. The candles extinguished, and the whispers ceased. The room fell silent, the oppressive energy lifting. They hurried out of the basement, the church now feeling empty and lifeless. Outside, the night was calm, the air fresh and clear. They drove away, feeling a sense of relief and closure. Back home, the nightmares stopped and life slowly returned to normal. Sarah continued her research, but now with a sense of peace. Centralia remained a ghost town, its dark secrets buried once more. The trio had faced their fears and emerged stronger, the memory of their ordeal, a reminder of the power of the unknown. Yet, in the back of their minds, the whispers of Centralia lingered, a faint echo of the town's eternal fire.
Thank you for watching Midnight Knocks. If you enjoyed our horror stories, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more spine-chilling tales. Don't forget to check out our other videos for more eerie adventures. Until next time, stay spooky.